Which IP addresses do PCs and laptops use if there's no DHCP server available? Is it possible, for instance, for this Windows 11 computer to talk to this Windows 98 or another computer if there's no DHCP server when using IP version 4? Well, it's made possible in today's world because of link local addresses. This is part of the special IP version 4 address range as specified in RFC 5735. So in this example on this Windows 11 computer, if I open up a command prompt and type ipconfig, note this IP address 10.121. That IP address was allocated through DHCP. On this Windows 98 computer, same thing here. I'll open up a command prompt. I'll type ipconfig. Notice the Ethernet adapter on the Windows 98 computer has got this IP address 10.122. Now you might be wondering, why on earth am I showing you old computers? Because link local addresses, or as Microsoft call them, automatic private IP addressing, became available in Windows 98. It's not available in Windows 95. So in the old days, this was a real problem. If you're as old as I, you'll remember that if you connected two devices together using a hub, here I've got a hub as an example, or you used a cable to connect the two devices, they wouldn't be able to communicate unless you configured an IP address on each of those devices. So on this Windows 95 computer, same thing here. What I'll do is run winipcfg. That allows us to see the IP address on this computer, which is 10.123. So as an example, on the Windows 11 computer, I can ping both the Windows 98 as well as the Windows 95 laptop. So there's IP connectivity between this laptop and those two laptops. But what happens if the DHCP server is not available? So as an example here, I'll unplug this cable because that's connected to the DHCP server. And now if I use the command ipconfig/release to release my IP address and ipconfig/renew to get a new IP address, what you'll notice is the IP address has changed to 169.254.53.76. That IP address was not allocated by a DHCP server. That is an auto configuration IP version 4 address or link local address. On the Windows 98 computer, I can use a command ipconfig/release all to release the IP address. As you can see here, it's got no IP address at the moment. If I use the command ipconfig/renew all, it takes it a while, but as you can see here, the IP address is 169.254.251.118. And that means that from my Windows 11 laptop here, I'll be able to ping or send traffic to that device. Ping basically allows us to test connectivity to a remote device. This tells me that there's IP connectivity between my local laptop, this laptop, and that Windows 98 computer. So since Windows 98, link local addresses or automatic private addresses have been available, but that didn't exist in Windows 95. So as an example here, we still have the old IP address of 10.123. If I release that IP address and then try and renew it, notice it says, error, DHCP server unavailable, renewing adapter. This Windows 95 computer doesn't have an IP address, and we can't connect from this Windows 11 computer to this Windows 95 computer because it doesn't have an IP address. As you can see here, the IP address is all zeros, subnet mask is all zeros, whereas on this Windows 11 computer, IP address is 169, and again on the Windows 98 computer, IP address is 169.254.251.118. They're both using automatic private IP addresses or link local addresses. This kind of information is specified in RFC 5735 or request for comments, which talks about special use IP version 4 addresses. If I search in this RFC for 169, what you'll notice is the address starts with 169.254/16 here means that the addresses always start with 169.254, and then these two octets could be something else. So this is the link local block as described in RFC 3927. It is allocated for communication between hosts on a single link. Hosts obtain these addresses by auto configuration, such as when a DHCP server cannot be found, as in this example. That wasn't available in Windows 95, but is available in Windows 98. And subsequent versions of Windows, available in other operating systems as well. Here is the RFC if you're interested, 3927, talking about dynamic configuration of IP version 4 link local addresses. This applies to IP version 4. IP version 6 also has link local addresses. You'll see addresses starting with FE80 as an example. So on our Windows 11 laptop here, what you'll notice is link local IP version 6 address is FE80, followed by information that's taken from the MAC address of the interface card on the computer. But this IP address with this subnet mask, notice 255.255 because it's /16 in binary, first 2 octets, 169.254 followed by something. That means again that this laptop will be able to ping the Windows 98 computer. Here's another example. I've got some Windows 98 virtual machines running on a Windows computer over there, Windows 11 computer. If I type ipconfig here, notice IP address here is this because it's still got the old IP address. But if I run winipcfg and have a look at this network card and say release and then renew in a very similar way to what I did on Windows 95, what you'll see is it won't get an IP address from a DHCP server. I'll click renew all. What you'll see is this displays an error, DHCP server unavailable, renewing adapter. And what we see is the device is using an IP address of 169.254.228. So again, if I type ipconfig here, IP address is 169.254.228. So on my Windows 11 computer here, I should be able to ping 169.254.228. And there you go. I have IP connectivity from this laptop to a VM running on that laptop. On this Windows 98 laptop, I could ping that IP address as well. So 169.254.228. And as you can see there, pings succeed. So this has been around for a long time. Special IP address range 169.254 followed by something in the 3rd octet and something in the 4th octet is a link local addresses or automatic private addresses. Windows 95 doesn't support that. So again, even if I click renew here, we are not going to get an IP address. It's going to fail. IP address is a bunch of zeros because the DHCP server is not available. From Windows 98, we have these private addresses that allows communication between devices. Now, as an aside, something of interest, we can still communicate between Windows 98 and Windows 95 if we run a different protocol. This only applies to IP version 4. So on that Windows 98 laptop, if I open up Network Neighborhood, I can access my Windows 95 computer using a different protocol. In this case, notice I am connected to the C drive and I can put in my password to access files on the Windows 95 computer. So as an example here, I could create a new file called test and press enter. So I've created a file on this computer called test. I can see that by opening up Windows Explorer on my C drive. Notice there's test.txt, has no text in it at the moment. If I open that up on Windows 98 and type hello Windows 95 from Windows 98 and save that, we should see that on the Windows 95 computer. So if I double click that on Windows 95, notice we see that file. Now that's because these laptops are not just running IP version 4, they're running a separate protocol called NetBEUI. This is an old protocol. So if I go to Control Panel on the Windows 98 computer and have a look at my network settings, what you'll notice here is we have this protocol NetBEUI in addition to IP version 4. So at the moment, I have this Toshiba PCMCIA card inserted into the computer, and that network card has both TCP IP enabled on it, as well as NetBEUI. So I can communicate between Windows 98 and Windows 95 using NetBEUI. I can't, however, communicate between Windows 11 and Windows 95 because this laptop is running two protocols, IP version 4 and IP version 6. This one is running NetBEUI and IP version 4, but the common protocol between the two of them, IP version 4, is currently not working because the Windows 95 computer doesn't have an IP address. I could obviously configure it manually so that the devices can communicate, but I simply wanted to show you that when there's no DHCP server available in a network, devices will use automatic configuration of link local addresses in IP version 4. Now in IP version 6, devices will always have a link local address, very different to IP version 4. They will have a link local address as well as other IP version 6 addresses that are configured or automatically assigned. But in IP version 4, when there's no DHCP server available, they will use this link local address, or as Microsoft likes to call it, automatic private IP addressing. Okay, so I hope you've learned something. I hope that I've shown you practically how this protocol works and how addresses are assigned. Again, the IP address range is 169.254, followed by 2 numbers that are dynamically allocated. So as we can see here, this Windows 11 computer is using 5376 in the last 2 octets. This Windows 98 computer is using 251118, and my other Windows 98 computer was using 2.28. They can all communicate with each other because they're in the same subnet or the same network. First 2 numbers are the same. This 255.255 in the subnet mask indicates that those 2 numbers need to be the same for them to be in the same subnet and to communicate with one another, which they can. Okay, I think that's enough information. I'll cover more in other videos if you're interested. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and clicking on the bell to get notifications. I'm David Bombal, and I want to wish you all the very best.